Welcome back to Razmov Sir TV today. I'm having back Dr. Kaveh Farrokh on our channel, and many viewers ask for another interview, so we are having Kaveh back here on the channel. Hi, Kaveh, how are you?
Greetings, Dr. Khorasani. I must and I cannot resist to congratulate you on your recent nomination as an editorial member of the Atlantis Journal.
Thank you.
I'm sure your readers and followers and friends would know. So you are going to be a scientific member of the board. Now,
Yes,
this is a peer-reviewed academic journal.
yes,
It's an International Journal of History,
yes.
refereed and scientific. So this is truly to be commended, and another feather in your cap of success. Speaking of
Thank you very
caps,
much.
we're talking about headgear today, I understand.
Yes, that's right. Mike, thanks a lot, Kaveh, and I also would like to thank my colleagues, also Dr. Professor Atay, and all Turkish colleagues in Turkey who invited me to be a member of Atlantis Journal. It's really happy to be that and to work there. Thanks a lot, Kaveh, for mentioning this as well.
And to add, the Turkish scholarship has it's like all of Turkey itself, actually. It's international level scholarship. Now,
Yes.
I'm not even talking about the technology, rise in technology and everything in Turkey, but amazing papers are
Yes,
being.
absolutely. Thanks a lot, Kaveh. Today's topic, we are going to talk about a very important period of Iran, about the Parthians. Everyone loves this period. So specifically, we are going to talk about helmets, if I am not wrong, correct?
Yes. If I may, I'm just going to do a screen share.
Sure.
The topic we'll talk about has been published. These are I'll be showing kind of selectively parts of a presentation I did with Dr. Ghulam Reza Karamian in Salish. And this is part of the Baltica Iranica conference hosted by Dr. Nick Sakanda and a number of scholars. This has been published in 2017 under this title, Crowns, Hats, Turbans, Helmets. This can be downloaded from academia.edu. So everything that we, especially if readers are looking for the actual specific citations, references, museum numbers, I tried to put some of them in the slides. All of these are available. A very distinguished set of scholars were there, David Nicole, and so forth. So you'll get they say, the rogues gallery of scholars, Dr. Miljarek, I met Dr. Nikonorov, and so forth.
Yeah.
So without further ado, let us now begin. So the topic,
So yeah, okay. Mhm. Thank you very much.
sorry, my slides have jumped,
Mhm.
but this is the first slide. So Hood is the topic of helmets we'll be talking about. So we will be overlapping a bit with the Sasanian era as well, because when one dynasty ends, it's not an abrupt start. It's a
Mhm.
continuum. There's going to be an overlap period. So
Mhm.
let us begin with the famous plaque. Basically, now what's fascinating is that this is in the British Museum, as we know.
Mhm.
So it's a Parthian helmet. We think third century, second century. But basically, what's fascinating, although the topic of armor is something we will be also covering in your series, but scale, possibly lamellar, Now they have said Seleucid um, as well, but I would probably surmise that this would be a Parthian or Iranian type cataphract in Seleucid service at the time, lancing a lion. Now, the British Museum, now let's focus on the helmet, describes this as being a coal scuttle type. Now, I've often referred to this as like the rough equivalent of the US M1 helmets. Uh,
Exactly.
it's very interesting. So the inventory number 91908, again, you can readers can download this as well from academia. So this is kind of one of the early types, but we're going to see a lot of variety. Now let's go because this is now in the West Asia, we'll say arena that we looked at. But
Yes.
now we're going northeast, Nisa. As we know, the Parni, as they entered, the um, closer and closer to Parthava, basically, and what is now, this is all in Turkmenistan now. What's very interesting is a depiction of the Parthian helmet from Nisa. So, second to first century BC. Now, this is a Parthian soldier depicted. And now, this is actually broken off from an original clay sculpture. So this was in a very regal Parthian residence and necropolis. So let's look at the design. Notice bowl-shaped high crest, crenellated. Now, readers will say, what about the Hellenic appearance? That's a valid observation because now we're looking at the movable cheek pieces. So this would strongly suggest a Western or Greek influence on Parthian military technology at the time. There's also Hellenic influences in military architecture, another topic possibly to explore. Um, Now, remember, this area was also uh, became Greco-Bactria. They broke off from the
Yes.
Seleucids.
Yes.
So there have been, excuse me, waves of conquest at the time. So Ledvinsky would suggest that this was possibly based on Greek models. Um, a blended sort of case. Let's
Mhm.
look at another. Now, let's look at the Chalchion, if I'm Chalchayon, your Chalchion Greco-Bactrian sculptures. So this you can find on Encyclopedia Iranica article as well. The design is again quite interesting. Now, notice there's now an egg-shaped, and the forward protruding, if I may say, visor. And now on the side, you see what's are leather rims, of possibly leather rims. So helmets aren't just what we see. We have to look deep, investigate deeper. So again, Hellenic or part Hellenic inspiration is another case. But there's again a lot of references. I put one of these here by Claude Rapin, for example, in Greek art in Central Asia and so forth. So definitely have a look at these. And these are all, a lot of good scholarship has already gone into this topic, but we should be aware that there is a variety. So it wasn't a standard type, depending. So the Parthian Empire was quite diverse. So here we started with the M1 helmet,
Mhm.
and now we're looking at the Nisa type helmet, Halcyon helmet. So this is now we're coming back west, so to speak.
Mhm.
So now we're looking at Bisatun. So this is a cavalry battle against enemy. Basically, um, here's Godard's fighting against Mithridates, his enemy, 49, midway through the first century. And of course, it's very eroded, but Reza Karamian has tried to take pretty good photos here. Now, what's interesting is depictions within Iran, to be honest, provide very little technical information. A lot of this is due to the harsh weathering.
Yeah.
Uh, so this does pose a challenge, but that doesn't mean they don't exist today. That's ridiculous. So the Parthian relief attributed to Gudars II, despite harsh weathering details, we can still get information. So experts will always be able to do that. So Now, what we know is the angle of the lance, aimed lower towards the enemy's abdomen. You yourself, Dr. Khorasani, have done a lot of works on one of your works, I recall, um, looking at the Shahnameh and the battles and the weapons being used on horseback. Let's look at the helmet. Only the shape is discernible, but this seems to have, and we're going to look later on, a parallel to the graffiti at
Yeah.
Dura. So we're going to look at that. Fascinating here is Tangisarbak.
Hmm.
More questions than answers.
Yes.
Uh, Again, it depends on the observation. So the Parthian lancer depicted in Block 3 at
Yes.
Tangisarbak is what we're looking at. So um, now the depictions within Iran provide scant technical information due mainly to weathering. Again, but we can't get into very definitive conclusions. Certain parts we can, like the Bal Gostvan, for example, we can in
Yes.
the large sort of archer gear case, but
Hmm.
topics for other discussions. But what we can ascertain is that again, the two-handed lance aid somewhat lower towards the enemy's abdomen. We can see the armor for riding on horse, the helmet or headgear. Now, the shape is very inconclusive. Now, whether this is a functional battle helmet or is it ceremonial or is it hairstyle?
Yeah.
That question often comes up. Now, we look at
Hmm.
some conjectural sketches by Wheelock, and we can see um, whether he had a helmet, a one-piece M1 helmet, or a red system, or sorry, red system
Yeah.
helmet. This is actually that poses more questions,
Yes.
but it's clear that there's a diversity happening. We don't have a standard General Motors quote factory producing exactly the same
So,
type of hardware, right? So this is something to keep in mind. Now, here,
Kaveh, just before we go ahead, explain for our viewers what is a ridge helmet.
well, let's have a look here. Dated to the first century to Singapore protruding. So basically, what's fascinating is the forward protruding visor. This is what I'm actually looking at here. Features the egg type, what appears. So basically, it's I'm really it's really conjectural based on the shape of the helmet. So I'm very, very cautious. I'm making a very specific attribution.
Yeah. Yes.
So I am naming it as such because of what's perceived to be the shape.
Yes.
The biggest challenge is that now there has been some exceptions. For example, there was a large hoard of Parthian weapons discovered at Vestamine.
Yes.
This, like for example, but we haven't had the same luck with helmets actually.
Yes.
As we come closer to the Sasanian era, yes, and then there are much more clear depictions as well. But even then, the chronology is not precise. So there are a lot of questions here. This is another question here. Like the National Museum of Iran, for example, has a helmet. They discovered this in Talish in 1970, northwest Iran. Construction is bronze, 29 centimeter in height. Now, the specifics of the dating of this helmet need to be re-examined. So the scientific dating of the metals, the appearance of the helmet raises questions. So this topic came up in the Baltica Iranica conference. This this actually raised questions because um, this actually looks like much older models of a Syrian manufacture. So this is, I think, the attribution of this helmet is a miss. I think the chronology needs to be revised. And this is a question that was raised during the Baltica Iranica conference, actually. Remember, David Nicole actually pointed that out as well. So this is this is a helmet, I believe, that needs to be further investigated.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's technically attributed as Parthian, but we need to kind of be somewhat more cautious about this.
And the rims, both of them are pierced, suggesting like possibly male, possibly. It's always hard
Yes.
to say, right?
Yes. Now I was waiting to see. Um, Basically, relying on your expertise, I knew you would be focusing on this topic. So this is very interesting.
It is, yes.
So, but this could be another topic we may revisit. Um, Possibly, maybe even resurrecting this, um, studying this helmet anew to revisit. But I do sense we need to also, um, if there's a way of dating the metals, that will settle the issue, um, on the question, on the identity of this helmet.
If we had like a wooden piece, if we had some organic material, it would be much, much easier to date. Going by metal alone is extremely, extremely conjectural, right? That's
That
going
still
by,
raises, yeah, I'm not a physicist, but I understand that the range of dating would be much more ambiguous, if I'm
yeah,
correct about
yeah.
this.
If we need an organic material, then it would be, but you can, if can see inside the helmet, you
Yeah.
can see by the way casting methods were used and different casting methods. Even, interestingly, do you have any close-up of this helmet
That
pictures?
is
No.
that's the one photo
Uh,
that Dr. Karamian managed to get before
I can
arriving
get no problem from Iran
on the
Boston
day,
Museum. No
because
problem.
we have the inventory number. It's 4461.
Yeah, yeah, I can get pictures, no problem, all dimensions. Interesting is to take a look, closer look, and to see what kind of layers this has. And that from this distance is a bit, it's really hard. It's really hard. Look at the second part. This I can make call it ridge. Yeah, exactly. Do you see that? It is wiped. You see, I don't know if it's the reflection or it's bronze. The bronze, the in origin, the real material is like
Yeah.
yellowish, right? And
Yes.
then on top of that, we have a reddish material because after like 500, 600 years,
Yes.
this material comes on top of it and gets solid. Then on top of it, we have this greenish material, oxidization. So these
Yes.
are these three layers. And then also based on how thick, first of all, if that reddish layer is there, one of the indication, I'm saying it very openly here, but one of the indication of fakes is always this reddish one
Yeah.
misses, right? But then if the reddish one is not missing, I remember in some auction houses what they did, what they did, Kaveh? They went and had some authentic material of this reddish. Then they pulverized it. Then they used epoxy and a glue, special glue, put that powder there. Then they put it on this one. And when it gets solid, you cannot tell. And then on top of it, then this greenish oxidization comes after a while when they bury it. So what the antique analysts do, what we do, we look at it, okay, is this, but then you see the reddish, very thick. But the thing is, that reddish material mixed with epoxy is already pulverized antique layer. But if you hammer it, it explodes in a different way. It comes off in a different way. So you can then take a look at that. But then if that's original, then you can look at the thickness level of it. Because based on that thickness, you can just try to say, okay, how much would it take that this layer gets, bigger? Then you can look at the pores in it. You can then also inside, you can also tell about the casting methods and see how it was cast. Was it like, cire perdu, as we say it? Was it one cast method? Was it two cast method? Was it cast on method? So there are different ways to analyze the helmet. and you can
That's why
get
your
lots of information.
expertise is so important. So whenever you get the chance,
Yes.
this will settle some really important questions because
Because
um,
many people when they see a helmet, when they see a helmet, the way I look at it as a weapon, the first question for us as weapon analysts is how it was made, right? To look at it how it was made and how it was used. Very often in these fields, people look at the shape only,
yeah,
but then it is limited, coverage. Is limited. It doesn't give us enough information to know about the material.
that's actually um, it was interesting you mentioned that because the shape doesn't determine function.
Exactly.
Um, and that's why I'm so careful. And I'm using terms like ridge or conical or M1 and so forth, because I can only have a two-dimensional, if you will, a reference point. But these are reference points, hopefully to build on. But definitely, shape does not determine function. I think this is something that's happened quite often. Uh,
Yes,
and then
absolutely.
all of a sudden you get papers in history being written. So we want to be cautious.
Yes.
Speaking of shapes and
Mhm,
depictions,
mhm.
um, here's a drawing of a Parthian helmet. So this is from the Marcus Aurelius column um, in the Piazza Colonna, Rome. So this is interesting because it's part of a Roman victory displays. Um, but we're going to look at the joust relief at Firuzabad as well and Duro Europus. Now, this is a particular victory exhibit. It's a Doric victory column, I believe, of Marcus Aurelius in the Piazza Colonna, like we said. Excuse me. What's interesting is that this seems to be a detailed display of a Parthian helmet. It almost looks Spangenhelm,
Yeah, I
where
would just say it does.
it does. And in fact, this is the only depiction I could find that would, I hate using the word proves that the Parthians were already using this technology. But
Um, Kaveh, can you put your cursor on this
oh,
area where we can
yes,
see
yeah.
the rivet heads?
Yes,
Exactly. So what
exactly.
so what Kaveh means with Spangenhelm, as we say in German, Spangenhelm, Spangen
Fine.
helmets, as the
Helm is
English.
helmet and then the parts, right?
Exactly. So they put
Riveted.
different parts and then they rivet it and then they have a enforced reinforcement band on top of it. Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
Got it. Perfect. So, um, that's the interesting part about it. So, detailed display. Now,
Yes.
there's also Parthian battle axe, spear banner, so we're going to skip that for today. The neck guard is very interesting. It seems to be one piece metallic appendage. I don't know if it's riveted, at least. I mean, I don't know if this is decorative.
Yeah.
Um, Now, versus plate lace. Now, we're going to look at that at Firuzabat.
Mhm.
Now, Hildinger basically says the Parthian helmet appears to be Spangenhelm, Sagnan's helmet. So often 4 to 6 metallic segments would be joined together with rivets and bands. To basically, it's a composite. It's an assembly rather than one piece and one helmet. More questions. Um, this When did this technology begin? Now, this is very surprising. This is from, get this, 6th century BCE, discovered at the foot of Sardis. Now, this is part of a excavation 10 years, 1987 to 88. Paper published by Greenwald, 1989. Now, typically we talk about the Sarmatians in Eastern Europe, but to be honest, the actual origins of the technology, um, this is interesting because this helmet was
Mhm.
discovered, well, according, and you have mentioned that radiocarboning can be questionable. So let's use that caution. Now, these scientists, maybe that needs to be revisited too, just like the National Museum of Iran helmet. But 6th century BC. Um, Now, is this a Schmangenhelm? with 8 plates riveted.
Does it come from a scientific excavation, Kaveh, or
Yes.
okay?
Yes. 10 years. So green wall. Again, definitely readers, please look at the references with this. It's something I've had to always raise questions about. So bronze work decorations are covering the joints. Um, the helmet was discovered in a rubble of collapsed building demolished during Cyrus the Great's conquest of Lydia, according to the finds.
Yeah,
Um, Now, there's no way of attributing a national or ethnic origin of any sort. To be honest, the helmet could have been a Lydian trooper, it could have been an Achaemenid trooper, or an ally of either.
yeah,
So, um, the notion of when a technology begins or originates, is often a we should be very, very careful in making definitive attributions. We go with the data we have.
yeah,
Uh, we leave the door open because my guess is we're going to get more discoveries as well. Um, Especially um, Turkey is a very archaeologically rich content.
yeah. Yes,
Just basically with such a potential for excavations.
yes.
With the old expression, where do we begin?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's now go to the twilight of the Parthian era. So now we're looking at late Parthian, early Sasanian helmets. Just very quickly, this is the Firuzabad battle relief. So the right panel, you see Ardashir the first lancing his opponent,
Mhm,
uh, Parthian king Ardavan.
mhm,
Now his horse topples backwards,
mhm,
and in the middle panel, you have Prince Shapur
mhm,
lancing his adversary, possibly Darbandan, the Parthian vizier. And in the left, you see an unidentified Sasanian warrior. Now, this is the one we're going to focus on. And a Parthian, both unidentified, um, with the Sasanian gaining the upper hand by trapping his opponent in a headlock. So he
mhm,
seems to have jumped on his opponent's horse.
mhm.
So let's do a close up. So here's the
Yes.
Sasanian, and most likely one of the Wazurgan, one of the nobility, but and this would be the Parthian opponent here. So let's have a closer look. So this again, functionality. This could be either a helmet or a felt cover. So we'll revisit that. The Parthian's helmet is very interesting. Now remember we were looking at the Roman sort of victory depictions and recall that there was a one piece appendage for the neck guard. Here we have more of a we have basically more sort of a almost plates, tiny plates here. But I'm just going to do a sidebar here. This is
This is
definitely not the
precise.
type of helmet that's being depicted here, unless this is a felt cover.
Mhm,
This was done by Wilcox. I mean, the depiction is accurate, but we don't know if the Parthians would have had this at the time. It's possible, at least when we look at the depictions of the Marcus Aurelius. These are so he's basing it on Sasanian helmets. So these are in the British Museum,
yeah,
and well, code numbers already there. But we actually have not found exact samples like this in
mhm,
Southwest Iran, contemporary to the early third century. This is something important to note. A lot of military historians, like in these contexts, will have to do what's called the best guess. It's still pretty good. But we need to look a bit more, again, we need to revisit this. But so we looked at the Sasanian helmet, could be one piece, ridge, or possibly soft felt. What's interesting is the Nishan symbol or Tamga. So either a military unit or clan designation.
mhm,
The Parthians' helmet, hemispherical, one piece. It looks that way.
mhm,
And the decorative curl placed on top of the helmet. So Um, this is very interesting because here we're seeing the successor of the Parthian military machine, the spad to the Sasanian spa. Now, there certainly could be an inheritance of technologies like helmet construction. However, the Sasanians appear to be exhibiting their own military characteristics, especially with the deployment of combination laminated laminar mail armor, which does not appear to be seen with the Parthians at Firuzabad, who apparently lack mail. So the Sasanians could have been using different technologies in helmet construction, but again, we need more samples to find. But Iran also is very content rich in archaeological finds, as we'll address later in one of our talks, hopefully at Vestamin in northern Iran. That was an accidental find, um, like large number of samples of Parthian era weaponry.
Mhm.
So this is actually in Panjali where Karamian, Ghulam Reza Karamian and his students uh, discovered. I wouldn't call that a relief, but it's more like a not an inscription, but I would say like a it's about 27 by 27 relief. I'm calling it relief, but I'm stretching it. So the locals call this Panjali. This is in the Lorestan area,
Mhm.
or Claw of Ali,
Mhm.
displaying. So here's the mounted cavalryman charging with a lance. So this is the rough outline, and this could be the remains of a cavalryman of late Parthian or early Sasanian
Mhm.
periods. There are parallels to Firuzabad, Dura Europus, and Naqsh Rustam.
Mhm.
Now, the site it's a rather recent discovery. What's very interesting is a high pointed helmet.
Mhm.
Uh, if this is a military versus ceremonial helmet, it could represent a ridge type helmet. Again, coming back to the word ridge, constructed of separate parts riveted together.
Mhm.
Um, Contemporary scholarship seems to say that the original
Mhm.
design of the ridge helmet is of Parthian origin,
Mhm.
maybe conical,
Mhm.
like the Dura. We're going to look at the graffiti Dura Europus as well. Now, um, again, more questions: ceremonial or military? If it's ceremonial, the headgear is very Saka or Scythian in appearance.
It
The old,
is.
yeah, have you noticed?
Mhm.
Um, Older, more ancient Apadana stone relief of the Saka Tigrachada, for example.
Mhm.
You'll
Mhm.
see the Charlotte's sharper and taller, but same sort of model. Now, the context of him charging with a lance suggests the helmet must have been military. If we're looking at the context. So let's look at Dura Europus. So again, dating. Notice we keep coming to the question of dating. There are three distinct chronologies actually for Dura Europus. One school dates this to the second century to early third century. Simonenko dates this to the second century to more specific. Herman and Miljarek have dated this to the third century, broadly speaking. So this would suggest the cavalryman we're going to look at is late Parthian. Current scholarship seems to be kind of looking at the kind of setting it later,
Mhm.
the early Sasanian era, post Parthian.
Mhm.
So to be honest, that let's again be clear that when one dynasty ends, it's not an abrupt end. Let's remember many of the big Parthian houses um,
Yes.
joined this House of Sasan. So
Yes.
we need to be somewhat wary of making it very specific. We can broadly say Iranian type and leave it
Mhm.
there. So the cavalryman could be post-Parthian, serving in the Sasanian spot. Um, like the Karens, Arshakuni, for example,
Mhm.
and so forth. So now this is a very interesting depiction. This can be a topic of several conversations and
Mhm.
between us. But let's look at the riders of the conical helmets. Now there are rows of metallic plates riveted together. That's interesting. Offers a number of detailed glimpses with respect to Iranian cavalrymen and their equipment. Now, the conical shape may be an adaptation to, now this is interesting, close quarter combat with swords, notably against top-down sword strikes. So they can deflect the power of the up-down sword strikes sideways. So it diminishes the possibility of direct strike upon the apex of the helmet. Now, Armenian cavalrymen are reported as having had this capability, especially to splice asunder. Variations of this conical design seem to have persisted into later Sasanian helmets.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these have been excavated in modern day rocks, Nineveh. So that's another interesting. So this is kind of a conjectural representation, not totally the same. So I'm really focusing on this piece because this seems to blend with Tangus Arvak partly, but this area. So this is very interesting because is this male or are they small plates? That's the other question about. Um, it's difficult to discern this with certainty. Now, this is a topic you and I have actually talked about, Sasanian infantry. But what's very interesting is the helmet of the Sasanian trooper from Tower 19. So this is again, early Sasanian era.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's the chest and right arm covered with remains of male.
Mm-hmm.
The ridge helmet is very interesting, the dimensions. Um, the specifics, of course, are right there. James has certainly looked at this. This is built of two pieces. So it featured mail suspended from its lower edges. Of course, this continued into the late Sasanian era. We see that with the Sasanian knight, the Avon at the Taghabostan. Um, Now, David Nicole, during the conference, did mention that he has actually seen this helmet, but it's actually been somewhat compressed. So it almost looks like those, I don't know what to call it, but not a beret, but the types of kind of what a it's more like a hat, not even a hat, but so it's very, very crushed. So there's no way that could have, that must be because of the weight of the compacted soil over hundreds and hundreds of years. So if any of you decide to watch this and see this in the British Museum, it won't have its original shape, but it's more compressed.
I
So
just recently, 1 year, 1.5 years ago, I had two of helmets in my hand. One Sasanian, obviously, Spangenhelm, and another one which David, Dr. Nicole, wrote about it. And I had them in my hands, and both of them were also compressed due to the pressure of the earth. Yeah.
fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. And I guess that's another crude way of letting us know how the chronology as well, because people who are geologists would be able to probably. It's interesting how we can make this multidisciplinary and to make the dating, especially of metallic um,
Yes.
data.
If they are
So
excavated, archaeological data normally can tell us the layers about about the dating. The problem is, as we both know, lots of illegal, I cannot call them excavation, looting has been practiced. So they destroy all archaeological data, and that's a huge problem.
it's embarrassing that this happens, to be very honest with you. It
Yes.
very embarrassing. Um,
I
let's
mean,
have a look.
Iran just retrieved, when I talked to one
I
of our
heard about
colleagues
it.
at National Museum, they found, I mean, it's now, they made a special exhibition on it. This was like a Sasanian, right? And it was a new one. It was maybe that size. So
Wow.
what they did, they went and then they had power tools to cut it. So they
Oh my,
took it to the west, but fortunately, Iran could trace it. They were trying to sell it at an auction house. So they traced it, and now it's after so many legal battles, they took it back to Iran. So it's now in National Museum of Iran. So they removed it from the original relief where it was in the mountain, but Iran now has it back. So the thing is, lots of these illegal digging, lots of these, theft happens, unfortunately, not only in Iran, but in all countries of
Yeah.
culture, as we both know, that we also publish in Egypt. So I know many Egyptian colleagues also and they told me as well the same thing in Egypt just recently just some months ago or last year, sorry, we were in Egypt, same thing happening there. And these are really, really old cultures, let's say Iran, let's say Egypt, let's say many other cultures, right? In the China, Japan, we have so many old cultures, right? And so many beautiful items. Like go to Thailand, go to all those areas, right? India, go to many areas in Asia and Africa. And, but then the sad thing is, then people tend to forget what these cultures offer or can offer humanity. And when they loot these cultures and bring them out, this is a topic maybe we can talk about it one day, Kavijan, about this. And then,
It's a real danger,
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
Um, to it's a real threat because misattributions and people just working for profit.
yeah,
Uh, it's embarrassing. It's I would say travesty, if I if I may say so.
yeah, yes,
But at least a lot of these things are um, safe and sound under lock and key, like our Ridge helmet friend
mhm,
here. Yeah, I call it Ridge because of but it's because of the pieces, I guess.
yes,
Let's have a look here very quickly. Was this only an infantry helmet? Well, um, possibly also used by the Aswaran. And here's where it gets interesting because this design had appeared among the Sarmatians, Ostrogoths, and Roman troops, especially after battles against the early Sasanian armies.
yes,
So there could be a possible interaction between Iranian military technology and Rome, Europa. And it's very interesting. Um, McDowell and Hook first actually addressed this. So during the reign of Constantius, there was the Schola Scutariorum Clibanatorium of Rome. Now, this is very interesting here,
mhm,
and I quote McDowell and Hook. The men who fought in these units were of Persian origin. Their equipment shows Persian origins. This is another,
yeah,
there's been a lot of interaction. Um, there's been a lot of military technology and military interplay between the Greco-Roman, let's just say, classical and Iranian worlds.
mhm,
Let's now go to Bishapur.
mhm,
Sasanian cavalry and standing figures of Shapur the First at Bishapur. Very famous site here. So again, there appears to be a mix of one-piece military helmets and
mhm,
ceremonial headgear. This one is very interesting. Um, Now that some people said long hair, that's one possibility.
mhm,
Uh, Dr. Nicole has made good points about this. They also strongly resemble male coifs, possibly.
mhm,
You've done a lot of work in this area,
mhm,
which could be worn under helmets, of course.
mhm,
Um, Now, this practice seems to have persisted into the late Sasanian times. Um, and I call this the praying knight. So, uh, basically, upright arms and a prayer-like gesture standing right next to Shapur the First victory panel. This may have been some kind of a lost ceremony, we don't know. Then there's a tall kolah or kolav, um, ceremonial hat,
mhm,
and a band along its bottom rim. Now, notice the Kedaris type, forward bent.
yeah,
Now, Kedaris is the bulbous or animal motif at the apex of the helmet. This could have
mhm,
existed. But again, the weathering um,
yeah,
makes this ambiguous.
mhm,
Now, the headgear could possibly one of the Parthian clans. So they were often the leaders of elite professional Sasanian cavalry, Aswaran, Savaran, within the spa. Ulbrich talks about the dynastic connections between the Parthian and Sasanian royal houses. So has Pul Shariati. She's done fantastic work in this area, especially the role of the Parthian nobility in latter Sasanian times. Let's now go to Naqsh Rajab.
Mhm.
And here, um, it's again, it's a bit of a smaller scale, but it's actually very, very content rich. So we're looking at the victories of Shapur the First over Roman forces. So we often just think of Nashir Sam, but there's Nashir Rajab. Four standing figures, scabbard-sized swords, pretty standard. Standing behind the mounted figure of Shapur the First. Now, all four figures, presumably these would be like professional warriors, military leaders. Um, that it's tall, but
Mhm.
not like the praying knight of Bishapur, and there's
Mhm.
no bending forward. It's basically, but again, lack of detail and weathering is a
Mhm.
challenge. Most likely in this case, um, these would be ceremonial. Um,
Mhm.
the, the battlefield functionality is not very obvious in this case. And Naqsh Rustam, let's look at Hormuz the second. So this is where the enemy is knocked off from his horse by
Mhm.
Hormuz the second, or Hormuz the second, and looks like he's looking at the jousting scene of his great grandfather, Ardashir the first. So again, we see helmets of the hemisphere type, fastenings at the basal area. Um, here we have two depictions. Center of the relief is a figure of Hormuz II holding a large two-handed lance, knocks off the enemy horseman off the steed. So, um, again, helmet of the fallen opponent
Mhm.
has similarities, get this, to the Parthian warrior.
Mhm.
Um, this is interesting. So the helmet Naqshir Sam, same overall shape as the Parthian, the unknown Parthian knight, a few years about.
Mhm.
And also notice the decorative curl here, just like the knight at Firuzabad. So possibly this could be Papak of Armenia, the similar helmet to Firuzabad. And remember,
Mhm.
there are Parthian houses who were against the House of Sasan in Armenia. Could this be an Iranian challenger from a Parthian clan?
Mhm.
So the helmet itself is leading to questions.
Mhm.
So this is now when we make this upright, right? So we can now see this more clearly. Um,
Mhm.
the to the rear of Hormuz II stands the standard bearer,
Mhm.
um, Bayraktar, so to speak.
Irak'ta, yeah.
Bayraktar. In Turkish, the Bayraktar, I believe they've been saying. Words decorated cap type, one piece metallic, or headgear. Bulbous attachment, side or temples of standard bearer. Same type of attachment, could be male, however, closer examination, again, is it male? Is it? Is it? That question keeps coming
Mhm.
up. Is it male or
Mhm.
some other type of system? While weathering again is a usual
Mhm.
challenge, it could be some type of fixed metallic attachment.
Mhm.
It could have served the same function as a movable cheek piece, possibly, like what we saw with the Parthian helmet in Nisa. So Bahram we're going to go to the case of, sorry, Bahram the second, but let's kind of look at the Qadaris, because like this one, for example, first to third centuries AD or CE, Iran or Anatolia, the attribution of origin, brass. Now, whether it's Persian or Parthian, the Boston Museum of Fine Arts states that Qadaris helmet is decorated with elaborately chased patterning, imitating the quilted fabric and rosettes on the sides and peak. So now we see the Qadaris of Phrygian caps, and it's very interesting. There's a stone relief from Koblenz, actually, Germany, depicting a
Mhm.
Parthian man wearing a Phrygian cap without ear flaps, or cadaris. So, it seems to be offering what Schneider suggests gold bars on a tray. So that's an interesting theme that we see associated. Now, this is why we're talking about Naqsh-e-Rostam, in this case, Bahram II.
Yeah.
Here, we see
Mm.
variations of the Kadaris type helmet
Yeah.
and relief of Bahram II. Four of the eight noblemen, in presence of Bahram II,
Mm.
in the non-combat relief, they wear these type of headgear or helmets with the bulbous
Yes.
motifs at the front. So, possible, numbers of figures could also at the other side, Bahram's family members.
Mm.
Notice even with the weathering, but there's
Mm.
also not just bulbous, but
Mhm.
there's a feline or bird type creature that's happening,
Mhm.
possibly a Seymour type motif. So here is, as we kind of go closer to the end, we always save the best for last. So they are striking parallels with two helmets found in ancient Dutch. Romania. What? This sounds interesting. So let's have a look here. So, A, this helmet was found in Ostrov, Romania. It's currently housed in the Museum of Natural History and Archaeology in Constanta.
Mhm.
B is most likely Dacian helmet, but this is housed in France, Musée d'Art Classique de Mougins. And C, of course, is what we were just zooming into.
Mhm.
Um, and this is what's interesting. Bird-like motifs. Or
Yeah.
there's um,
Mhm.
it's sort of a beaked motif or
Mhm.
simorgh motif.
Mhm.
Very, very interesting. Now
Mhm.
notice there seems to be some kind of a larger military culture.
Yeah.
This is a coin, and notice again the tamga, the nishan,
Mhm.
uh, between the Dacian helmets and depiction. Get this, Shapur the First,
Yeah.
silver coin, and he wears a tiara with the diadem and the ear flap. Notice,
Yeah.
and here we have the only difference. This you see a lot in Sasanian motifs, holding some kind of a pearl.
Yeah.
So, what's fascinating also,
Mhm.
notice here these types of like what we call a feathered motif.
Yeah.
See that on
Legacy.
later Sasanian swords.
Yeah.
There's there seems to be an underlying motif of a shared military tradition.
Mhm.
And then, of course, here we see a mix, of course, of Hellenic motifs as well, of course, but
Yes.
in Romania. But there seems to be a wider shared culture, and we can even end with this here. Notice this Nike figure. We also see this
Yeah.
here. At this is now Tal Bostan, I believe. Fascinating to say the least. And here we can end on this note. Um, A is a Dacian prisoner,
Mhm.
the Arch of Constantine.
Mhm.
B is a bust of a Dacian. Um, and then here is a Parthian prisoner, Arch of Septimius Severus. This is very interesting, and I think hopefully this has raised a few questions,
Fascinating. Yes. Really fascinating.
whetting the appetites of academia.
Yes, absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
I'm
Brilliant.
also wondering, with your
Mm.
nomination in the distinguished journal
Mm.
in Turkey with Atlantis, be
Yeah.
interesting to see with you and your colleagues possibly initiating a lot of excavations, because there's so much layers of history of the Achaemenid Parthian. There are Parthian artifacts, as far as I know, in Turkish museums. Be fascinating to explore, like the Battle of Amida, for example, and to
Yeah.
excavations in that
Mm.
in the environs. Um, there's it seems like every time we and the topics we're going to further explore,
Mhm.
there's a lot more gaps we need to fill. Like these topics you saw with Romania, lot of this there were Romanian colleagues there.
Mhm.
Dan Tudor, Professor Dan Tudor, Romania, who had actually helped me draw these types of links because who knew Dacia, Parthia, is there some kind of a connection, like a broader military culture that we're not even aware of, which we must include because it's part of the same system. When we go into Central Asia, we're now looking at the Xiongnu and their Turkic successors, the Hunnic successors. A lot of parallels there.
Mhm.
And of course, we know basically of the technological interactions and so forth. But maybe I should stop there. Um, thought.
No, absolutely. Was very, very fascinating, Kaveh. Thanks a lot. It's really amazing. Really, very, very interesting. Just some notes I just wanted to mention. Kaveh mentioned scabbard slide system. Scabbard slide system is a system of hanging a sword, which you have a loop right close to the scabbard mouth, not very close, but then this is like a loop, and then they will pass the belt through it, and then the sword is hanging vertically, either in front of you, or to the left side, or to the right side, as we have seen with Dr. Akbar Zadeh. We wrote on Sasanian swords and also the coins we compared. Then later on, then they had P-shaped scabbard, or it doesn't need to be P-shaped, but two, which almost horizontally, so the sword can be, hanging from your belt. And another thing, Kaveh, can you share? I think it was Firuzabad where they were wrestling. This was
Well,
something I just thought maybe that would be very great to just make a comment for us, and then this would be
actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because this also, um, let me just go back to the share.
yes, because I just wanted to say something, which yeah, this one. I realized something here. This interesting thing is if you take a look at this Sasanian warrior holding him with his left, look at his left arm above his neck, basically controlling the chin, and going with his left hand and go under the armpit of him. Then his right arm of the Sasanian is holding the pishqabs, I'm sure, or the pasqabs. Pishqabs, if it is pishqabs, I don't know, maybe pasqabs, could be pasqabs, but both are possible. Front of the belly, you hold the belt, or if it's pasqabs, goes back and this. So this is the best way. You see that he has his hand down, holding this, and which is we do it also in wrestling, in jiu-jitsu, or in judo, and the other one is there, and to pick him up. That's very fascinating. Anyone who did that exactly knew how a wrestling move is done. And look at the Parthian. He goes below the armpit of his right, grabs with his finger and tries to push it down. That's neutralization, as we do in judo, as we do in wrestling. This is fascinating to watch how exact these techniques are portrayed here.
This is a fascinating observation, especially given your expertise in the martial arts in the basically Iranian martial arena. And
Unbelievable.
it's now this raises questions. I guess like I've conjectured that this is an attempt at unhorsing the opponent. But it's and the and it's interesting jumping upon the horse. Somehow managed to mount the horse and catch the Parthian opponent basically, and it's a trap. It's it's fascinating to see the tech, like the actual tech, like the specificity of the technique, and
And
that
then I was thinking
oh,
the Parthian, he's holding his right arm in the right way, and possibly with his left arm, I don't know if he's holding the rein, but he should leave it out. The best way, if someone grabs your belt, be it pishkabs or paschabs, he should go with his left hand, and the first thing he has to do, he has to grab the right wrist of the Sasanian. At least he can neutralize it for a while. The problem he has, again, he has two hooks. One hook of the Sasanian is below his armpit. Going over the body means that he's paralyzing the whole body, which he cannot move left and right. And the next one. So, but his left hand of the Parthian is completely wrong. He's going to be thrown because he needs to stop the locking system of the right arm by grabbing the wrist of him. But possibly he's still trying to manage the horse riding.
That's what I was thinking. Like
Yeah.
if he abandons
Yeah.
guidance of the horse, then he can concentrate on his opponent.
The
But that
problem of the rein is, when in horseback archery, you need to let the rein go. As you know, that like in miniatures, we were talking with bead as well. Also in the ancient Iran or later,
yes,
they hold the rein like this from top, so they let it go and then they can shoot. Or
yeah.
also because if I have it in my left hand, the shield hand, and try to do, the moment I pull it, the horse responds to it. I don't want it. I want the horse to go. So then, but he's still trying to do that. And this is very wrong because, if the guy pulls him back and forth, the rein goes to this side and that side. You understand what I mean? So
Absolutely.
the first thing he has to do is to let the rein go, and then go back and try to
There are no
neutralize.
stirrups, right? So if there were stirrups, at least there could be because basically, before stirrups, I mean,
Yes,
there's the horn saddle, as you know,
yes,
uh, and then and before that, people were just using the power of their legs to steer,
yes,
right?
yes. That's true.
Uh, it's a lot
Thanks
of
a lot.
motor control. I'm going to stop there because
Thanks a lot,
this
Kaveh.
this looks like another paper. This looks like another research paper.
Yes,
This
thank you.
looks like another one. So to be continued for sure. I hope we can at some point talk about armor, and then we can introduce sort of what's happened also at Vestamine. They found and restored one piece of armor as well. So
Mm.
there's definitely, especially to bring your expertise into this, and then have our right, um, uh, uh, basically our readers and also other experts to see what they think.
Thank you.
So
Could you stop sharing, Kaveh, please?
yes, now we stop sharing.
Thank you very much. It was really fascinating. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure the viewers are going to enjoy it as well. Your expertise, your knowledge on this issue. You have been writing a lot on Iranian military history and ancient Iran also after that. And I would like to thank you, Kaveh, for everything you have been doing. Do you want to add something to our video for our viewers today?
It's been a pleasure chatting again. And especially interesting, even like when this conference was happening, a lot of new questions came up in our
Yes.
chat. Like your observation towards the end about the basically the martial arts technique on horseback. I've often wondered about this in passing, but I'm really glad you drew that attention and highlighted this. So something to build on, another topic to build on.
Yes. I mean, an interesting thing is also, for example, in Koshti Pahlavani, the first thing they try to grab, because upper body is naked. I mean, you can do it because in Greco-Roman we go into grips that are like that. But there is to get the pishkabs, paskabs, means the shalwar Pahlavani in front or in the back, so they grab it inside, or to go to pishkase, paskase, because shalwar Pahlavani is short up to your knee, and then they go grab it behind the knee, in front of the knee. So once you have that, for example, if I get the pishkabs of a guy and pishkase of a guy and bring it up, then I can throw him. So controlling these four parts of the pants, or as British say, trousers, is extremely, extremely important for Varzish Pahlavani. And back then, of course, we can see that they're still using these techniques because you can grab part of their armor to neutralize and to immobilize the person. And as you know that as well, when we do now, for example, like in Chuhe wrestling, we have it, this Chuhe wrote an academic article on that. in Khorasan, and they also have a jacket which is very old. Like it's not like judo, but it's like jacket wrestling. And like in judo, the first thing it happens when they try to grab is fighting for the wrist. So they try to put the hand away when they're grabbed here and there. So it's always fighting goes to get the better position. Right, Greco-Roman is the same, but with Greco-Roman, when the upper body is naked, you cannot grab part like we do in others. So then you need to grab the body and immobilize the body. So they show really that the person knew that you need to immobilize. And once you immobilize, then you can throw, be it on horseback or be it on foot. So they're really showing the technique so well on this. Fascinating.
It's a
Really.
fulcrum principle,
Yes.
because you need some kind of
Yes.
stability to
Yes.
then pivot the opponent. It's
Yes.
with garment or without.
Yes.
So if the garment isn't there, we go to joints and wrists and so forth.
Yes. Yes.
This may be the first conversation about Firuz Abad in this context. I really appreciate this observation. I think, again, I'm sounding like a broken record, must be continued. This is yet another um, seedling that's been planted,
Yes.
needs to be
Thank you very
addressed.
much, Kaveh. It was a pleasure having you here on the channel and hope to see you soon. And thank you and bye bye.
To be continued.
Thank you.